Hey there, welcome. Today is kind of part two of the seeking video. Previous video, I talked about how it's true that we do not have to seek anything outside of ourselves. We don't have to seek anything in another land, a sacred pilgrimage or a specific technique to master. And this is echoed in much of the non-dual teachings, the direct path teachings. But at the same time, there's something off about it. And I mentioned that one of the things off about it is a sort of spiritual bypassing. Trying to basically not do the work, or just wanting a conclusion, just wanting an answer to it all, or even self-validation, just wanting to be like, yes, I'm fine just as I am, and I don't really need to change. But there's a little bit more to the story than that. And I also mentioned how it's true that we don't have to seek, in the sense that infinity is our very essence, and that's the thing that we're talking about when we speak about enlightenment and moksha and perfection and Buddhahood and attaining God realization. And there is a metaphor I use, which is like you have all these tools, all these fancy tools, from simple hammers and drills all the way to, table saws and planers, but you really don't know how to use a lot of them, most of them. You might not even have the setup right or know which ones to use when. And so that's kind of an analogy for, yes, we have this infinite awareness. This is the very thing we're searching for, and we don't actually need to search for it. And searching for it can just be a double-edged sword. But there's actually a certain style of seeking that is simply learning the depth and intensity, the infinitude of our awareness, of our consciousness, of our beingness, and how to utilize that appropriately. Appropriately, not in the sense of how do you build a house that stands up, continuing with the analogy, but more, how do we honestly and authentically use our consciousness without creating more limited frameworks, even if we've labeled the framework infinite or boundless or Buddhahood. And so, like I mentioned, I'm not enlightened. I do not know how to sustain infinity awareness at every moment of every day. But it gradually increases. It's gradually unfolding. But I do know some things. I do know how to use some of these tools or some parts of awareness. And I've covered a lot of that in these videos. And some of that really is about fearlessness. It's about not really being attached to how we've been doing things. It's about realizing what we do that causes us suffering. And I use capital U, us, which includes all beings. It includes all sentient existences. How do we live a life that doesn't harm them? That we don't need to justify any limited behavioral pattern that causes pain and suffering towards animals and ecosystems. And how do we act when we don't know how to stop it, when we've reached a limit, when we've reached an actual wall in and of ourselves, that we know it's best to change a certain thing, but we don't know how. But basically, not trying to convince ourselves, then my way must be right. Then it must be fine and it must be good that I do these habits, I do these patterns. This kind of self-justification, defense mechanism style of existing is kind of the antithesis to embracing the limitlessness of our entire being. And having the patience to appreciate the boundless difficulties that can be present in an infinite reality is more akin to embodying the realization than just trying to contract and hold tight to our way of being, saying, yes, this is right, yes, this is good, when we have, the universe kind of telling us, hey, no, it's not. So the things I want to talk about in terms of seeking today are a similar thing that I always talk about, and that's the seeking doesn't exist. I'm guilty of what I'm about to explain, which is kind of part of how I know it. So there's no personal judgment in anything I ever say. It's like there's self-realizations, they're pattern recognitions that I can see come from a limited space. And this actually applies not just to people of today, but it actually applies to many of the writers and teachers and philosophers and yogis of ancient times. And there is this almost guaranteed stance of limitation, of illusion, if we are being too reactive, even if it's for good reason, even if it's philosophical and contemplative. So, if we looked at reality and we saw that we were trying to grasp at something imaginary, whether it's a future outcome, a recreation of a memory or a collage of memories that we're trying to make, it's an image in the world like that of a meditator or yogi or Buddha, and we're trying to recreate that, mimic it, whatever it happens to be, this, whatever we have labeled seeking. If we came at that and said, oh, we don't need to do that, universal, full stop, black and white, we are more likely also in some limitation stance. Because if you're fully infinite and you're just love itself, you don't care if someone looks like they're seeking. You're unaffected, you're unphased, untarnished by the activities of infinity, because that's what infinity does. It does infinite things. So there is this happening in the teachings and the lineages that there's a bit of like the yogi, the monk, the Buddhist, the Advaitin, they see the world and they see a pattern that maybe they don't believe is getting people to that gem of awareness, that gem of consciousness. But the very fact that they're like universalizing a statement could even mean that they are also not fully experiencing it. Because seeking isn't anything. It's just infinitying. And this is why I think you can discern between what I call the non-dual lineages and the Ati yoga lineages. I use Ati yoga very loosely. I use it loosely because it is also a thing. There's kind of two avenues of Ati yoga. There's the Ati yogi, which is Shiva. It's very related to Shaivism and even Shaktism. But then there's Ati yoga in Dzogchen Buddhism, in Vajrayana Tibetan Buddhism, which is sirened by Garib Dorje, Padmasambhava, some of their first teachers, their first enlightened masters. And it's basically saying like there's no not perfection. Like all the appearances, all the things you think you see, they're not like lies, they're not illusions. They are the great wisdom. They are the great perfection. They are enlightenment. There's no like samsara over here, nirvana over here as any limited notion. It's just all the unlimited nirvana, natural state. And this is spoken of in a lot of more maybe direct path teachings, but also kind of like bhakti, Advaita Bhakti teachings. You hear this a lot with kind of like people like Neem Karoli Baba, Jalalamudi Amma or Anasuya Devi, Ramana Maharishi, even Shirdi Sai Baba to some degree. You also hear it in the more advanced Advaita Vedanta, so Avaduta Gita, Ashtavakra Gita, maybe even like Ribhu Gita. You don't hear it as much in the Bhagavad Gita or Shankara's teachings. It's basically like it's all perfect. Like nature is God. Like everything we see is God. Even the fact that it's limited. It's like we know there are sounds we can't hear, sights we can't see, or lights, frequencies we can't detect. We know there's more than meets the eye, but we didn't choose these eyes. God chose these eyes for us. So it's like even in our limited, seemingly limited experience, that bubble of awareness is infinite in and of itself. It's completely God. It was made completely by God, and it's transitioning from birth, life to death. It's growth and change over time, whether it expands or contracts, whether we embrace the teachings or reject them. That's all God too. That's all infinity doing its thing. It's all Shakti, it's all Shiva. It's all the great wisdom, the great perfection. So the notion of seeking isn't really a thing. The notion of not seeking isn't a thing either. The things we see, and if we label them seeking, we're already far from the gate of heaven in our mind. The gate of heaven is just reality itself, which is what we've been speaking about. But it's like there's nothing to say not to seek. And Anasuya Devi says, I don't teach sadhana, any particular discipline. Whatever sadhana you take is going to be right for you. Whatever sadhana you change from is going to also be right for you. It's not even you that decides. It's the infinite Shakti that creates the impulse. Sitting down and meditating isn't even our own decision. It really is just the decision of the infinite. And I think this is kind of clicking into the truth a little bit more accurately than the more like there's nothing to search for or be effortless, have no intention. The reason being is that the idea of not seeking versus seeking, everything we associate with them, the images, the behaviors, the interpretations, maybe we interpret meditating as seeking, we interpret reading as seeking, we interpret even watching a video as seeking, we interpret desire as seeking. Everything we lock into those categories, this limitation isn't it. Like this is just not what the infinite is in total. The infinite can do any level of limited experiences, but by being engrossed in them, we forget our infinite nature. So that Shakti, that impulse, that God's will, if you will, is more important. It's more present. It's more apparent. It's more actually what's going on, even if we don't know what words to use for it, or maybe there's no words we can use for it. That's more evident of what is happening than the dualism of seeking and not seeking. Because, like I said, maybe we need to practice certain things and learn certain things and change and grow. Maybe we need to actually change from any limited perception we have, any limited attachment and fear we might be dancing with, and alter to actually embrace the ephemeral infinitude of every moment. Well, this could look like meditating, it could look like exercising, it could look like, wandering the world. It could look like creating things, it could look like helping people. It could look like a lot of things that we would naturally label seeking or searching. It could also look like not seeking. It could look like just hanging out, sitting around, kind of just being content with things we would label not seeking. The thing is, the actual experience of infinitude for each individual, wherever they're at, inclusive of their whole life and everyone around them and the entire universe, is far more important and evident of the enlightenment path than the dualism of seeking, not seeking. Same with desire, not desire. Same with having concepts, not having concepts. The concept of concept doesn't even exist. The idea of desire doesn't even exist. The idea of seeking doesn't even exist. They only exist in the same way any labeling exists. And we know that this is just not necessary to experience beingness. It's part of beingness. It's here. The capacity to use words. The capacity to imagine the future and try to make something happen in regards to that imagination, which we might call seeking, or even we might call that desire. These are patterns that exist in infinity. But the point isn't to live in this kind of opposites realm of desire, no desire. It's to live as the infinite. If something that looks like desirelessness happens, we're fine and dandy. If something that looks like desires happen, we're fine and dandy. If something that looks like thoughts and concepts happen, all is well. If something looks like thoughtlessness, no notions, all is well. And that's the same with seeking and not seeking. And that's where meditation practice actually kind of is needed. Because if we're honest, if we're authentic, the intentions and the patterns that happen in the world are not inducive of realization. They strive for difference and conflict, anger, reactivity, addiction, craving, resource extraction, exploitation. Most of the things that happen in our everyday life that we're kind of attached to, that we've grown accustomed to because we were born into it. We're just born into this world with things already in motion. They're all diametrically opposed to actually realizing infinity. And so the not seeking can be a helpful statement in the sense of learning about contentment and detaching from the things that we crave, the futures we're trying to create and run after, whether it's spiritual or hedonistic. But otherwise, there's actually kind of like activity that needs to happen that's going to embody infinity more. And I say that not with like certified like proof. I say that with like an intuitive understanding of Shakti in general. Because we're gonna have an impulse. We're going to have a desire and a drive to help people, to make the world a better place, to go outside our comfort zones, because we're going to know that God is far beyond our comfort zones, far beyond our societal lines, far beyond these very few habits that most humans dance with. And we're going to simply both want and long for God consciousness, but also as we become it and realize it more and more and remember that it is ourself, our own existence, the less and less we need routine necessarily. It doesn't mean routine doesn't happen, it's just like there's not a need for it. So any level of like, which a lot of people are guilty of, any level of realizing God and then doubling down on our habits, you know, especially ones that do cause suffering or unhealthy patterns, or they are actually just swimming in distraction and intentions of limitation, which a lot are. Like really, like there's a lot of lies out there in the media. There's a lot of like trying to stir trouble just to get money and attention, a lot of greed, a lot of limited intentions are embedded in majority of the content online, the majority of what people make. There's a lot of like trying to convince other people about something for our own gain, our own bias, which is limitation almost entirely. And when we do that, and then we engage with it, like as a viewer, as part of our habit, our daily routine, and we just zone out and flow in with that without this kind of more ethereal, ephemeral, expanded awareness of our true infinite nature, the more we're just actually distracting ourselves and kind of part of the problem of not being enlightened, and the harder we make it to actually choose true, authentic enlightenment, because we keep labeling it's all enlightenment. We don't have to seek. It's all God. It's all infinity. And then we just do the things that are like in their essence, like wanting limited consciousness. And we actually don't do those things with infinite consciousness, because when we do it, when we come to our infinite self, we almost never want to do those things. There's nothing guilty, nothing to be ashamed about if we do it, and we kind of like turn it off and on, you know, experience some awakening and then just flow into our daily habits that might not be with that awareness. It's not like a judgment on our personhood, that's just part of the flow of things. But the more and more we wake up, the less attractive a lot of these limited consciousness patterns that are riddled in our consumerist behaviors and our entertainment content, the less we're going to want to do those things. Naturally, that's going to be the natural Shakti. The more we're going to actually want to cooperate and build together and be fearless and share resources, because like, we don't need much, we're infinite. If this body goes, who cares? Let's fucking uplift each other. But that's not what's happening most of the time. People engaging in spirituality, they are at this like fork in the road, trying to have their foot in and out of the door, like making money and having luxury and appearing in some way enlightened or clean or pure or fresh or smart or whatever, but also maybe, yeah, you know, they dip in to the practice and the readings and they have this earnest understanding, and so they have these experiences, these little tastes like I do, but then we never actually fully submerge ourselves. So that's all I wanted to say. There'll probably be another video on this soon. Thank you for watching. I'm signing off.